video, we are going to be talking about how to dance to the Qanoun. So this is part of the series Taksim Tips, in which we look at different instruments that are used in Middle Eastern music, and we look a bit at each instrument and what kind of sounds it can make and how it works, and then we look at how we can dance to it. So let's jump right in talking about the Qanoun. So the Qanoun is an instrument that is a zither-like instrument. You can think of it as kind of this trapezoidal shape, like a big trapezoidal board that has a bunch of different strings going across it. It's a little bit like if you took a harp and made it smaller and then turned it horizontally, kind of, but also different. The instrument actually originally comes from a Greek instrument called Kanoun, which meant law or rule, because the string was how they could determine mathematically different notes based on dividing the string at different points, and then when you pluck the string or make the string vibrate in some way, depending on how long or how short the string is, you will get a different note. So that's why the Qanoun has this kind of trapezoidal shape, or cut off trapezoid, because the strings get shorter or get longer depending which way you go up the Qanoun, and that's how you get all the different notes. So it's a stringed instrument. It is played by plucking the strings, and it has quite a wide range of notes that it can play. So the Arabic Qanoun can go for almost, actually more than 4 octaves. So it can go all the way from F2, which is an F that is approximately 2 octaves below the middle C F, all the way up to G6. So that's a big range. You can play a lot of notes. Other Qanouns can only play 3.5 octaves, but that's still quite a large range, going from the lower side of notes up until a high range of notes. So you have a lot of variety there. And the sound quality of the Qanoun is a bit, in some ways, like the oud, which I talked about in another video, which is another stringed instrument that, again, you would pluck it. But with the Qanoun, the sound is a bit brighter, I would say. So while the oud has this kind of rich, mellow sound to it, the Qanoun, in my opinion, has more of this bright, even shimmery sound to these pluck notes that you can get played very fast. So you can play a whole bunch of different notes very fast, and you can slow it down and have variations that way. It's a very complicated instrument to play, probably one of the most complicated instruments, if not the most complicated. So anyone who can play the Qanoun, amazing. But it's also a great instrument to dance to. It appears not just in taksims, but you will also hear it as a solo in other types of songs, especially in Megance. You might have some sections where there's a Qanoun. So, now that we've looked a bit at the sound qualities of the Qanoun, let's talk about how we can dance to it. So, the Qanoun, you hear actually this all the time. You hear when there's a Qanoun, shimmy. And this is, yes, it's a great rule of thumb. In general, I do shimmy when there is a Qanoun playing by itself or kind of at the forefront of all the instruments. But as with everything, there are no hard and fast rules. So usually a Qanoun, the sound goes very well with shimmying, but you might want to do other things or take a break from shimmying at different times and do something else. So I shimmy a lot. But as we talked about the oud, which has this kind of mellow, rich sound, I tend to do a looser shimmy to the oud, whereas with the Qanoun, because there's this brighter, tighter sound, I'll do a bit of a tighter shimmy usually. So how can we get a tighter shimmy? We can make it a bit smaller, we can make it a bit faster, and we can contract our muscles a little bit. We can contract our legs, we can contract our abs, we can contract our glutes, and these will all give the shimmy a slightly different quality than here. This is a loose, very loose shimmy. This one I might do more with an oud, whereas here I'm adding some contractions. I'm making it a bit smaller, it's tighter, and it just has more of this canoon feeling to it, in my opinion. So I do shimmies, but they're a bit different from the oud shimmies usually. And you can also do other kinds of shimmies, so not just your basic Egyptian shimmy here, but you can even go into a bit of a choo-choo shimmy. So adding some movement. And I also like to do little hits and things when the canoon slows down a bit. So I might do some stomach hits, something like that. Or another thing I really like to do is some single hip drops. So that's a really nice thing to do when that string plucking gets a bit slower and it's not quite for a shimmy. Another difference between the canoon shimmy and the oud shimmy, with the oud I talked about how because the oud has a bit of a lower range to it and it has this very full, rich feeling, I usually like to do movements in my hips, emphasizing mostly the lower body. Whereas with the canoon, like we talked about, it has a much broader range than the oud, so I would do movements layering on top of the shimmy that can really be anything. So I can do the hip movements like with the oud, so any eights or circles or vertical eights. I will also do camels. Camels are really great for the canoon. And I will do things with my arms as well. You can really layer pretty much anything you want on the shimmy. And I might vary it a bit, again, depending on the range of the canoon. If it's a bit higher, I might be going higher up in my body, and if it's lower, doing something lower in the body. So there's a lot that you can play with the canoon. And again, like I said, I like to kind of pause every now and then if I'm shimmying a lot, just to give myself and the audience a break. Ideally pausing when the canoon is also pausing. But yeah, just to keep things interesting and not just going shimmy all the time. But yeah, the basic things I like to do with the canoon are that shimmy, a bit of a tighter shimmy, and with the oud and layering it with pretty much anything you can think of, hips, upper body, camels, arms, and I will play again using choo-choo shimmies as well, using those hip drops, using other kind of isolations when the vibrations of the canoon slow down a bit. So, I hope that was clear. There's a lot you can do to the canoon, so you really have a big range of movements to play with, which can sometimes make things a bit harder. But let's turn on some music and try to dance to a canoon. As always, you can follow along with me, or you can just go on your own, make up whatever you want, and try to really feel that canoon, feel those vibrations inside your body, and then let them come out. introduction on how to dance to the Qanoun. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you found it helpful. If you did, please do like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you have anything to say, feel free to leave a comment. I love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching and happy practicing.